By the time they realized something was amiss, the first name had disappeared from the list, the same moment the first of their crew disappeared. What would you do if your crew members started disappearing one by one? Welcome to our YouTube channel. Before diving into this extraordinary tale, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more intriguing stories like this. Now, let's go back to the previous century to discover the mystery behind the disappearances. The HMS Resolute cut through the Arctic waters, its reinforced hull groaning against the encroaching ice. Captain Edmund Harrington stood at the prow, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Behind him, his crew of 23 men braved the bitter cold, their mission clear: to map an undiscovered passage and etch their names into history. Among them was Thomas Whitaker, a young cartographer whose hands never left his leather-bound journal. He recorded everything: the shifting ice, the dwindling rations, the uneasy glances exchanged between shipmates. Yet as the days grew darker, the sense of foreboding became impossible to ignore. Winter's grip tightened, and soon the ship was locked in place, held captive by the ice. The men adapted, building makeshift shelters on the ship's deck, rationing food, and telling stories to keep the darkness at bay. The howling wind outside carried with it a sense of something unseen watching from beyond the ice. The crew took turns keeping watch, but it did little to ease the growing tension among them. Then the disappearances began. The first to vanish was Seaman Randall. He was there one night, laughing at a crude joke over supper, and by morning, his bunk was empty. A search party combed the ice fields, calling his name until the wind stole their voices. No footprints. No blood. No sign of struggle. The men whispered theories. Perhaps he wandered off in madness, or the ice had cracked beneath him. But Thomas Whitaker found something else: Captain Harrington's journal, left open in his quarters. Randall's name was there, crossed out in bold strokes. Beneath it, the next name was written: Quartermaster Doyle. Doyle scoffed at the superstition. Coincidence, he spat. But that night, he too disappeared. His lantern still burned outside his tent, his boots sitting neatly by the entrance, as if he had simply walked out into the endless white void. Panic set in. The men, once bonded by shared hardship, began to suspect one another. Accusations flew. Was it mutiny? Madness? Or something far worse lurking beyond the ice? Whitaker confronted the captain, demanding answers, but Harrington's face was grim, his knuckles white as he clutched the journal. The list, he murmured. I don't write the names. They just appear. A terrible silence settled over the remaining crew as they gathered in the captain's quarters, staring at the cursed journal. They had laughed at tales of ghost ships and cursed expeditions. Now, they could not deny the truth. The journal was predicting their deaths. And the next name on the list was Thomas Whitaker's own. The ice outside groaned, shifting as though something beneath it had begun to stir. Dr. Evelyn Graves tightened the hood of her insulated parka as the helicopter hovered over the desolate Arctic expanse. Below her, a dark shape broke through the vast, frozen whiteness, the wreck of the HMS Resolute, lost for over a century. The ship had become legend among historians and explorers, a ghost vessel swallowed by ice and time. Now, after years of searching, her team had finally found it. As they descended onto the frozen surface, the biting wind howled around them. The wreck was eerily preserved, its wooden hull blackened by time but still intact, as though it had been waiting for them. Evelyn led her team forward, the crunch of their boots on ice the only sound apart from the wind. The ship loomed ahead, its broken masts clawing at the sky. We're making history today, murmured Dr. Samuel Reed, the expedition's historian, as he adjusted his camera. But even as he spoke, there was a hesitation in his voice. The Arctic was vast, empty, and silent, yet it felt as if something unseen was listening. Inside the ship, the passageways were sealed under layers of frost. They had to force open the doors, each creak of wood reverberating through the desolate corridors. Evelyn ran her gloved fingers over the walls, feeling the ice-frosted carvings beneath. "Look at this," she whispered, brushing away the frost to reveal a series of strange, intersecting symbols etched into the wood. Not standard nautical markings. Something else. "These weren't made by the crew," Reed said uneasily. "Or, at least, not in the beginning." Further inside, they found the captain's quarters, astonishingly preserved. A thick layer of ice covered the furniture, the bed, and the wooden desk where an open journal lay frozen in place. Evelyn bent down carefully, peering at the inked words visible beneath the frost. "Names," she murmured, "all crossed out. Except—" Her breath caught as she scraped away more ice, revealing something that shouldn't be there. The last few names in the list were changing, the ink dark and fresh despite the ship having been lost for over 100 years. One of the names on the list was Dr. Samuel Reed. A sharp crack echoed through the ship as a distant voice called out from outside. One of the crew had gone missing. The ice groaned beneath their feet, as if something vast was stirring beneath them. Evelyn straightened, heart pounding, as she looked back down at the journal. The names had changed again. The ice tightened its grip around the wreck of the HMS Resolute, as if trying to reclaim the ship and the intruders who had disturbed its slumber. Dr. Evelyn Graves shivered, though not from the cold. The discovery of the journal had unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The inked names shifting on the page, Samuel's name appearing where it shouldn't. None of it made sense. Outside, the wind had risen to a mournful howl. The missing crew member, Paul Henderson, had vanished without a trace. They searched the perimeter, their voices calling his name swallowed by the relentless Arctic gale. There were no footprints leading away from the site, no sign of a struggle. It was as if the ice had simply swallowed him whole. "This isn't natural," Reed muttered, gripping his coat tightly around himself. "People don't just disappear." Evelyn exhaled, her breath fogging in the frigid air. "Neither do inked names rewrite themselves." The team retreated into their makeshift research station, a temporary structure set up near the wreck. It was supposed to offer security, warmth, and rationality. But as the storm raged outside, fear slithered into the corners of their minds. The journal sat on the table between them, its presence heavy, demanding. The names, the cursed, shifting names, taunted them. Hours passed. Then another name was crossed off the list. This time it was Dr. Laura Chen. A sudden, distant scream sent them scrambling for the door. The wind was deafening, but Evelyn knew what she had heard. Chen's voice, full of terror. They ran out into the night, flashlights slicing through the swirling snow. Then silence.
Chen was gone.
"We have to leave," whispered Mark Patel, their engineer, his face pale under his hood.
"Right now.
"This place, this ship, it's cursed. We can't leave without figuring out what's happening." Evelyn shot back, though her heart pounded against her ribs. "If we run now, we might be next. We need to understand the pattern." "Pattern?" Reed hissed. "The pattern is death. And we're on the list." Despite her fear, Evelyn forced herself to study the journal again. There was a logic here, hidden beneath layers of superstition. The crew of the Resolute had vanished one by one, just as her team was now. Something had doomed them, and it was happening again. She turned the page and froze. There, scrawled in jagged ink, was her own name. A sharp crack echoed across the ice, followed by a low, guttural groan from deep below. The frozen landscape trembled beneath their feet. Something was waking up. The research station trembled as a deep, guttural groan echoed through the ice. Evelyn felt it vibrate through her bones, an unnatural sound that sent a primal warning through every nerve in her body. The others heard it too. Reed dropped the journal, Patel stumbled back, and the remaining crew huddled closer together. Something beneath the ice was shifting, waking, stretching from centuries of stillness. "We have to go. Now." Patel's voice cracked with panic, but Evelyn wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked onto the journal, where her name remained, stark and inked, refusing to disappear like the others. "The list isn't predicting our deaths," she murmured, flipping back through the pages. "It's choosing." The crew of the Resolute wasn't just lost, they were taken. And were being taken too. Taken by what? Reed demanded. The question hung between them, unanswered, as the ice shuddered beneath their feet again. Evelyn's breath came faster. She turned back to the strange symbols carved into the walls of the wrecked ship. They weren't just markings, they were warnings. They had been left by the last survivor, Thomas Whitaker. A desperate attempt to leave a message for anyone who might come after him. Whitaker knew something, Evelyn whispered, flipping the journal to the final entry. The ink was frantic, scratched onto the frozen pages with urgency. The names will not stop. The cycle will not break. Unless one stays. Her stomach clenched as she understood. The disappearances weren't random. One person had to remain behind to appease whatever force lingered beneath the ice. One survivor. One offering. The realization sent a cold wave of terror through the group. Patel backed away, shaking his head.
No.
No way. We are not playing along with some ancient superstition. Then why is it happening? Evelyn snapped, gesturing around them. We've all seen the names change. We've watched people disappear. What if this is the only way? A silence settled over them, thick with dread. The ice groaned again, louder this time, as if it sensed their hesitance. Cracks slithered outward, dark fissures against the frozen landscape. If we leave, Evelyn said carefully, we have to leave together. If one of us goes missing, the cycle continues. But if we break it, if someone stays, we might stop it for good. Reed's face twisted. And who exactly stays behind, Evelyn?
You? Me?
Patel? He let out a dry laugh, edged with hysteria. We're scientists, not sacrifices. Another deep rumble from beneath them. Patel cursed under his breath. The research station was no longer safe. The ice was collapsing. They had to move. Evelyn met Reed's gaze. Then we need to find another way. Before we're not the ones choosing who stays. The wind howled like a wounded beast, rattling the walls of the research station as the ice beneath them moaned in protest. Evelyn clutched the journal to her chest, her pulse hammering as she read Whitaker's final words over and over again. The names will not stop. The cycle will not break. Unless one stays. The others were arguing now. Reed was shouting. Patel was pacing, his breath fogging in the freezing air. Their remaining crew members, 3 of them left now, looked on in stunned silence. The reality of their situation had sunk in. If they all tried to leave, the disappearances would continue. If someone stayed behind, the rest might survive. Evelyn looked down at the page, the ink trembling as though it were alive, shifting beneath her fingers. Her name was still there. Evelyn Graves. But something else was happening. Slowly, as though guided by an invisible hand, another name was beginning to form below hers. Mark Patel. He saw it too. His breath caught as he stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the lantern that cast flickering light across the cramped space. No, he whispered. This isn't real. This is some trick, something we don't understand yet. Patel? Evelyn reached for him, but he recoiled, his face twisted in fear and betrayal. You saw what happened to the others. We can't just ignore it. And what? Accept it? Sacrifice me? He gestured wildly at the journal. I refuse to believe something under the ice gets to decide who lives and who dies. A deafening crack split through the air. The floor trembled, sending a shock wave through the station. They barely had time to react before a section of the ice outside gave way, revealing a yawning chasm of darkness beneath them. The void seemed to breathe, exhaling gusts of frigid air that sent their bodies reeling backward. Evelyn grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself, her mind racing. The cycle would not break unless one stayed. But maybe there was another way. She turned back to the journal, her heart pounding. What if we destroy it? She said suddenly. The names, the cycle, everything is tied to this book. If it's gone, maybe we break whatever's causing this. Reed hesitated, glancing between the journal and the abyss that had opened outside. And if that doesn't work, then we run, Evelyn said, determination hardening her voice. But I'm not letting this thing decide for us. Patel was shaking, but after a long moment he nodded. Burn it. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She grabbed the lantern, tipping it over the journal. The oil spread across the old, brittle pages, and as the flames took hold, the ink writhed, twisting as though it was trying to resist. Names faded, burned away, and with them, the groaning ice beneath their feet seemed to still. The wind outside changed. No longer a howl, just silence. The void in the ice remained, but nothing reached for them. No more names appeared. Evelyn exhaled, staring into the fire, knowing they had done something irreversible. Let's get the hell out of here, Reed muttered, and no one disagreed. As they left, the wreck of the HMS Resolute stood frozen behind them, untouched by time. The journal was gone. The cycle was broken. But deep beneath the ice, something had witnessed their defiance.
And it was waiting.
Thank you for diving into our incredible stories. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures.